Okay, Taylor.
Yes.
So nice to join you on the couch, the Moonward texturized couch, which is very
Nice.
appropriate.
Yeah, it's good to be here.
Yeah. How's things been today?
Very busy, as you know.
Mm.
Yeah, very busy, but it's good. I think it's nice coming in and like seeing everyone like already getting started with the day. I enjoy that.
Yeah, I think that when at the point of recording right now we are, I think it's like 11 o'clock or something like that in the morning. But like work is well underway, and yep, I know we're into it. It's a Wednesday as well, hump day, so lots of great things going on.
Yeah, a lot. Lots of good stuff happening out there.
So I think that, obviously a lot of our clients have seen you around the place. The product ownership role is something that is very unique to software. It's definitely not something that, from my experience having worked in marketing or anything like that, doesn't exist, these sorts of things. So I think that we're going to dive a little bit more into, what a product owner is, especially at Moonward. And we'll also talk about like some of your skills and where you obtain those along. So I think that for us to kick on, it would be good to describe where this all started. Did it start in high school? Where did you kind of decide to make your start into tech, basically?
Yeah, it kind of wasn't meant to happen. I think it was probably grade 8 or 9. One of my best mates she was doing IT, and she's like top notch. She knew what she was doing, and she was very well put together. And I needed to do something else that was like silly elective that I felt like I could do. And so I started with that, and at that time it was like ICT, so that was like information communications and technology, and it was like,
oh my god, I remember.
Yeah. Everyone that wanted to touch a computer did that class. So we started in there. It was like you did silly little stuff, like you did certs like IDMT, which is like media and stuff. And then the big thing that kind of did it for me was we got to touch a program called Blender. I don't know if you've ever heard of that.
I have not.
It's like a free, completely free 3D modeling tool.
Oh wow.
And the idea is that you have to just model stuff, and it's used for construction and stuff. And so we did that, and it was basically just sitting at a computer and modeling stuff all day. I fell in love with that. I enjoyed the creative sort of process of building something that could be something. So I started there, and then obviously that sort of continued on, and we became IPT, so that was processing technology, I believe, and that was more coding. So that's where we got to do we used to create a little program where a little ant would go around the screen and pick up stuff and things like that. We did big cybersecurity talks, but that's where I fell in love with it. It was you could sit down and do it for an entire day.
Yeah.
That was high school for me, was essentially just doing all those little developer things throughout high school, and that's sort of where it kicked off from.
Yeah, no, I think that's really cool, and I definitely remember the ICT, and I remember being in high school, there was such a mystery around computers as well, and I remember, I don't know if it was the same as in my high school as it was in yours, but we used to have those big computer rooms, and they were 30 computers, and they were all ancient, and they had all those locks and stuff on them, so that you couldn't access the internet or anything like that. So I always used to find people that went into those, ICT classes, it was
I think for us as well was we had a really good teacher at the time. She was really chill. She ended up being one of my favorite teachers ever.
Yeah.
And she was one of those teachers that would have a joke with it, so it made the class that more enjoyable. So even if you didn't love what you were doing, you could and because everything at that time, as you said, was quite unknown. It wasn't like it is now, but I think that sounded old. But it was a completely different world, and I think having a teacher like that, your love for what you're doing just a million times more.
Yeah, I think it's incredible, when you have a great teacher, the influence that they can have on you, especially when they're passionate about something, and then that translates across. No, that's cool. And then I think so obviously you graduate high school.
Yeah.
And what's next for you?
Yeah, I actually didn't go straight into IT. For a long time there, I was going to do like biology. I wanted to do like not so much vet stuff, but I wanted to work with animals. So I actually volunteered with the RSPCA for a bit.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, helping little kids. And I did that for a bit, sort of, kind of like a gap year, I guess. But it was like you just didn't travel.
Yeah.
Like you just stayed home and you're like, what do we do?
Yeah.
But I think in that time I sort of I did like my little coding projects on the side, not knowing that I was eventually going to do it. I did that for a little while after graduation. I went to uni, went to a private academy in Brisbane here. Entertainment business management, so completely not.
Oh wow.
Not related to IT. I did that. That was good. It was mainly about like bands and management, so it was good. And then yeah, I got a job with a mate at Queensland Health in IT, and I'm like, guess I'm in IT now.
Yeah. So what kind of like just peeling it back, attracted you to working in that like entertainment management sort of space?
I think at the time, like I was one of those like emo kids that like really into music. So it was an easy sort of one for me of like I enjoyed the management side of things, of being able to help people, of like being the in between of you want this, I can do this, let's go do this. And I think that was it for me. Was I didn't need to be the performer, but I also didn't want to be just the receiver. I wanted to essentially work with people to bring music to people, I guess.
I feel like that's such a great in between as well. Like, because you're not the performer who's, having to exert themselves all the time and, taking on all the risk and all those sorts of things. But then, as you said, like, you get to, like, go that step above, like, just, like, enjoying a show and stuff like that as well. So that's really cool. And then, so Queensland Health, working in IT. Just describe that job a little bit.
It was hectic. So I was a technology officer there, and we essentially would go into usually hospitals. So like, we'd go in there and operating rooms and such, and they'd always have like a PC in there, like a little one. We'd go in and we'd change it out, and so we'd make it had all that like medical software and stuff on it. We'd do all of that for them, and so a lot of the time it was you're running between different areas here and there. I enjoyed it though. It was a nice physical job because you're running everywhere, but at the same time it was nice. For the most part, it was nice calm. Of like you could have an hour of just building up PCs, and then you'd have 3 hours of running around like a headless chicken. Yeah. But it was good. I enjoyed working with one of my mates there. And then sort of just moved to different teams and continued on.
And were you still studying your entertainment like management at this point and working in this job?
No, well I left the entertainment one just before I started there. And when I started with Queensland Health, I had completely changed to a new uni and had gone, I'm just going to do information technology. So I switched what I was learning and I did that part-time on the side and full-time work. So I was sort of had my hands in both pots of doing both.
Yeah, maybe describe that shift a little bit for you as well, because like that's quite a major thing. Obviously we were talking about in high school you really loved like this IT sort of space, and then you also really love this other space as well. And then it's just like, what? No, I'm gonna go like in a completely different direction again.
Yeah, I think it was wild for me at the time because I was so set on animals. I was like, this is where I gotta be. Like, that's it. But I think I realized that there was a lot more, when you come out of high school, like, you realize a lot of stuff. And I realized that I was a lot more creative than I had given myself credit for. I liked the process of building something and completing something. And working with animals wasn't giving me that. It was just not there. And so that's when IT sort of came up, and I'm like, I can do that here. And so I that's where I sort of found it, was being able to build stuff, and I was like, okay, if I'm going to make the change, I've got to make the change. And it was like a very hard call of like, I've got to stop volunteering, I've got to not bother with uni, and I've just got to go for it. And it was terrifying because I remember talking to my parents, I'm like, I don't know if I can do this.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's not great, but I think once you make the call and you just dive into it, it's so much easier.
Yeah. It could be good to like touch a little bit on, you know, what information like technology is, because I know that there's like a lot of different facets of this. Like, you know, my stepdad is a like IT person, and you know, he is someone who like traditionally works with, you know, hardware and stuff like that, you know, so there's so many different like facets of this, and he would be like, you know, going and setting up computers for like, you know, big commercial buildings and all that sort of thing. So maybe describe a little bit more about like what like sort of IT you were working in.
Yeah, so I pretty much similar at the start was hardware.
Yeah.
That's obviously a major component of it, like as well as you then eventually touch systems and coding, things like that. So it started in systems, and that sort of progressed to very important part, testing. I was a UAT tester. So that sort of role, you obviously got support included in there, QA. Yeah, so it was hardware at the start, support, QA, development. I guess in terms of IT, that can range from, you know, just the entire, like obviously they call it the Internet of Things. So that can be anything from, you've got the whole side of web, you know, web development, that sort of stuff, app development, the likes of that, I guess, if that's sort of a good enough explanation.
Yeah. Okay, so you have, unfortunately, you've had to say goodbye to donating or, you know, spending your time with animal shelters. You know, you've decided to study and do that part-time and work, like full-time or part-time at Queensland Health. And kind of like, you know, what was the next step for you in your mind?
Yeah, I needed something stable. There was not really a chance to be in a stable place. I wanted a place of stability to essentially find out early in my career if this is what I wanted to do. And I knew for that I needed to work full time. I needed to have that stability of like, okay, probation period, done, get to work.
Yeah.
And yeah, I needed, that was the main thing, was stability, and that helps immensely when you're trying to just figure stuff out. Like, because I could have left the Queensland Health job and just not gone back into IT. I could have, and there probably was a thought in my mind, hey, biology is still an option. But I think I just needed to give myself that chance of like, okay, you've done it before, turns out you're actually not bad at it, let's get it going.
Yeah. And so like what happened after, you know, Queensland Health? Like how long were you kind of working there for?
I think I was there for about 10-ish months.
Oh yeah, nice.
Yeah, so almost a year. But yeah, I after switching teams a couple times, I'm like, okay, I gotta go for a bit of stability. So I ended up leaving and going to another company as a UAT tester. Yeah. So they were keen on getting like a junior on board that they could sort of build up to stay at the company. We had talked, you know, I wanted to delve into data a little bit, and data analysis, and so we came to agreement of I would leave Queensland Health, I'd come join them, and I'd essentially be a full-time employee with them, study part-time, and when I got to the point where I could take on development roles, I would. And so that was it was an easier decision for me in the sense that whatever love I kind of had for the hardware side was gone, which is probably a good thing. But I needed a change.
Yeah.
And so I thankfully got that when I went to the new place, and yeah, it was really lovely.
Yeah, that's cool. And did you find that you were able to like, you know, use that creativity that you were kind of talking about like in this new role?
A little bit, yeah. Like there was a lot of autonomy. I got that a lot more at the second place after Queensland Health was autonomy, and so being able to sit down and just focus on one thing for a day and get it done. But creativity, no. I didn't get that much there because it was very data driven. Yeah. So I was essentially, if I wasn't doing UAT testing or helping out on support, I was doing data work. So that was converting stuff so that it fit well into the program. So I never quite got the creativity part there in terms of developing stuff.
Yeah, and I think that this is something that I was speaking to George about in one of our Moonward games. You know, if you want to check that out, we were talking about how you know, sometimes working in, you know, with code and with computers and all of these sorts of things as well with apps, like, you know, it's very linear. You know, it's like, does the product work, like yes or no? And it is a very like logical format. And so a lot of the times, like, people get creativity in these areas through other ways in IT. Is that kind of what you're like saying here? Like,
yeah. So I obviously, because I was the creativity I got was from uni. We at that point were doing a lot of hard coding, and you'd come home at 3:00 on an afternoon, and I had to go straight to uni, and I'd be coding all night essentially. And so that was your week, was Monday to Friday, 3 p.m. to, I don't know, 10 maybe, coding, and then the weekend coding. So that's where I got my creativity from, and that's sort of how I lasted there, of obviously good people, but at the same time having an outlet of, okay, I'm not doing something creative at work, that's okay, I've got time when I get home. And it was sort of just a perfect timing of sort of the courses I was doing being very creative heavy, and that sort of gave me that outlet.
I think that's really cool. Because I do like genuinely agree, like, with the whole creativity like sort of side, and I think that sometimes like people, there can be like this sort of misconception with coding around, like, you know, you're going to be like super creative in your job, and again it like really depends on the job.
Yeah.
You know, it's like we've got a few staff members here who, you know, they studied IT formerly in like computer science and all those sorts of things, and then when they actually enter the workforce, you know, they're just like, oh wow, like this is like not it, like, you know, it's a similar job to just being like, this is the formula, and you've just got to like kind of apply it throughout. So okay, so you were working in this other company, like as a UAT, and they were giving you like the occasional sort of development work, and then you were also studying and being creative like after work as well. So did you move on to another company at this point and sort of be able to work in more of this creative development that we're talking about?
Yeah, I ended up switching to another company. Obviously I'd been at this place for quite a while, over a year. It was quite stable, thankfully. I moved to another company with a focus of sort of cutting out the UAT and support and just focusing on development, taking it on full time. And I got there. Again, not as much creativity. It was more related to databases and sort of systems like that. So my focus turned to, I again made the change of, I need to just do one thing. And I was like, okay, I'll put all my eggs in the basket, see how I go, may as well give it a go, right? So I did, and I gave it a go for a little bit. And yeah, it was mainly databases. I think for me, for a good while, it worked really well of being able to work with data. But I think, again, the creativity came to bite of need to do something. Need something.
Maybe like let's delve a little bit into, you know, like databases and all those sorts of things as well, because I know that like it's kind of a bit smoke and mirrors, you know, for clients. They don't really, I think they understand what a database is, but like, you know, the importance of the database, especially like when developing, you know, apps, like web apps and all these sorts of things as well. Yeah,
so like the database essentially, in my point of view, is key in terms of, the best way to look at it is sort of, do you remember the old like in and out little folders they used to have like on teachers' desks?
Oh yeah.
If they had information coming in, they put it in. Yeah, it's essentially like that. Except it's less. You'd hope that less information going out. Obviously, with the information coming in, you need, you know, that information to be able to get them into other sort of areas of the app. So like, for example, if you've got one where in order to access a particular part about food, you need a certain level of access, we can store that along with your name and who you are.
Yeah.
Essentially just a one localized place for information that we then use to build out an app, whatever it may be. It's just a key to holding information. And that's why it's obviously so important of making it secure. Because obviously, like I said, you don't want information going out. And the information you do want going out is stuff that they've asked for. Yeah. Which is kind of where you can get that little bit of a loophole of, did they ask for the information or not? It's integral to development in any sense of, like, it's not just a security thing of they've got to make sure it's working correctly. It's also a trust thing. Like, like there's obviously been plenty of leaks recently about stuff like that, but that's a trust thing with the relationship with, obviously for us, our clients of, thankfully we haven't had that, but it's like, we know it would be a trust thing of, we need to make our databases as secure as possible, and so that way we're fully confident in it and the client's fully confident in it.
Yeah, and I think that a good example of this one could be I think there's two tiers to this, like the data leaks that you were like referencing like recently, is obviously the obvious like data leak, and what's happening with I think it's like Medibank or something like that. So basically the data, it was being used in a correct way, but like the data was just being fed like to the wrong source essentially. And a good way that I like to describe this is like, in terms of you want your data to show up correctly, is like if you're using like a Netflix account or something like that, you want to know that when you log in, it gives you like all of your suggested videos, like, it displays your name, like, it's got your subscription details on there. You don't want to like log into Netflix and just be like, oh my god, who is John Smith? Like, what is he watching? Like, and all those sorts of things as well. So that's kind of what we're talking about with the in and out, like with the data as well. It
also does allow for that like personalization, like because obviously there's using Netflix again, that would be stored in the database of, okay, Piers watched this over the weekend, let's get out this. And I guess that comes into other parts of IT as well, in terms of like recommendations and suggestions of the real smart AI kind of thinking of, you like that, I'm going to give you this. So yeah, that's sort of a good point of databases is the in and out, but as well as the actual data that's in it.
Okay, so I think we've described a lot about like your developer roles, which is really, really great because I'm sure that you've learned a lot of hard skills from working in development and soft skills as well. So obviously you work in development in a capacity, but you're doing a completely sort of different role now. Did you actually, let's start off by describing like, what it is that you do.
Yes, I'm obviously a product owner at Moonward. We essentially are the middleman between client and developers. We sort of pull the whole team together and we keep everyone on time, on budget, organised, and we essentially just give anyone anything they need. So if a client needs a particular piece of information or a particular deliverable by a certain time, we do what we can to facilitate that. As well as if there's developers that need information from the client, we facilitate that. We make sure that they have what they need to get started, and we're sort of the main point of communication. So if there's anything, you should be able to come to us, and as product owner, we should know everything.
And it could be good to describe, what, and I know this is such a typical question, like, what does a day look like for you?
Yeah, it's good because it ranges on the day. So like obviously you'll have a lot of client meetings throughout the week, but usually get in about 8:30, probably have 30 minutes to get some little emails off to clients maybe, chat with the team a little bit, and then you'll have scattered meetings. Some of those could be client meetings, others could be, a full sort of session with the team, like an onboarding to get them caught up. But then apart from that, in between that, it's getting back to developers in terms of things that they need, getting back to clients about things they need. Little things like that. Or uploads, obviously. Quite a while. Uploads, and a lot of small tasks that add up to a lot of time. So that's sort of I'd say 60% of the role is sort of those little tasks that other people probably don't want to do and don't have time for, so we do them.
Yeah.
It's a lot of organising too.
Yeah, definitely. There is a lot of organising. And I think, like, what would you say is the benefit of having, like, a product owner in a software team?
I think it's a lot of... There's a lot of communication that needs to happen. And I think especially for us is what makes us kind of different is that we put a lot of focus on that relationship with the client. And as good as developers are, it can be difficult for them to manage not only the developer side, but as well the the communication side, because it is quite heavy. And I think that's where sort of the product owners come in, is we provide that level of care to the clients, of feeling like they constantly have someone in their corner, because obviously we also drive the vision. You know, designers will come in, smash it out of the park like they do, and when they make that transition for them can be very scary, of going from having a designer for however many weeks to a developer. So we obviously try to be there throughout the whole process, so that way it's a little less scary, like, okay, there's always constantly a product owner in the corner for me. And we make sure that, you know, if they've got a really strong meaning behind their app, we take that from the designers and we take it with the developers. And that way there's a little extra touch to the app when it's done, so they feel like it's theirs. Yeah,
exactly. And I think that that was an important point that you put in there as well, and it's about, you know, the fact that there's designers and developers who are working together at the same time, and like I can't think of two people who are on more opposite spectrums, basically, you know, because we've got like the super creative type, you know, the person who's, and you know, our design team is very good in this sort of regard, you know, but they want everything, you know, the flourishes, the, you know, they've got the biggest vision, like I think out of everyone, and then the developers are kind of like, okay, how am I logically going to develop this and stuff like that. And to introduce the product owner into that is kind of that, as you said, again, like it's a middleman, not even just between the client and the team, but also, you know, the team and the team as well, to just be like, hey, like, love this vision, like, you know, this is what the client's trying to achieve, and it's like, we can have this, but we also need this as well.
I think we sort of also like try to enforce the earlier time frame, obviously, but the logistics behind it. Like you want both the designer and developer sort of come together on a conclusion that you sort of mediate, and not like it gets rowdy or anything, but you sort of just make sure that everyone gets there and all the little loopholes or grey areas have been covered off. And I think that's sort of like, that's one of the areas that we sort of focus on heavily, so that way we're not worrying about them like the last week. We're doing it the first week, and that way everyone's on board.
Yeah, exactly. And I think it was another good point that you mentioned there, where you were talking about like there's a lot of like heavy client communication, you know, and all those sorts of things, and you know, they always want to know that there's someone in their corner. But I think it's also good for them to know that, like, you know, when they come to us, their product isn't just them anymore, like, you know, it's an entity, it's like its own thing as well. Which I don't know if you've ever seen like any clients like have trouble like letting go with that sort of thing.
I think everyone kind of does in a way. Like there's always going to be like, whether it be like the whole app or a single feature, like they could be dead set like, I need this feature in my app, I don't care what the rest happens. Which it happens, but I think a lot of the time, and you get wise, that they're, you know, it is their vision that they're bringing to you, and they're trusting you with it, and they're like, please help me build this. And it's like, it's nice. You take it, and you take it with care. Like we sort of talk about it, and we're like, okay, they really want this, we need to help them get it. And it's a nice conversation to have with obviously the other product owners in here, of how can we do the best for what they need, and obviously getting the team on board, and you can kind of onboard them like, hey, we need to do it, like it needs to be good, stuff like that. We need to
Do you feel that, like, I think it's interesting because there's definitely some things that I've learned about you that I didn't know, like along this journey. But do you think that it's kind of a role that's blended a lot of these things that you've enjoyed along your own, like, you know, career journey into one as well? Because, you know, we've got creativity, we've also got, like, you know, the structure of development. I'll admit we don't really have hardware yet that we're, like, integrating with. But then again, it's that middleman sort of piece.
Yeah. I think it worked well in terms of, as you said, like bringing everything together that it's already done. Obviously we're not developing anything, which is probably a good thing. Wouldn't have the time for it, but like being able to see everyone build it out. Obviously we're sort of, you know, constantly with the developers and talking about things, so we get to see it built out, and that's really cool. At the same time, you also get the creative part where we get to jump into meetings with designers, and fireworks everywhere. It's magic. and it's good to watch and to see like the look of people's faces when they see that brought to life. That gets it going. But I think it did sort of bring it all together well in terms of you kind of pick up things from everything from each job, and you're like, I really enjoyed this, I didn't love this as much, and it just happens. And I think I kind of, over the past 3 roles I had, picked up a little thing each way, and I've just molded it together and I'm like, I think this is it.
Yeah.
And sort of Moonward came up and it was an opportunity, and I'm like, this is the thing. And I was like, oh,
this
God.
is it.
Yeah, like this is all 3 things that I kind of wanted to do, and I think it was good timing, it was good, and yes, learnings. Like you'd never want to sort of, I guess, not give it a go.
Yeah.
And I think that's sort of, it was good. It was the right thing.
And I think like just doubling back to the development space, because both of the product owners that we've got at Moonward, they've actually both come from like a development background as well. Like what sort of skills do you feel like can translate directly across to like product ownership?
I think, like especially coming from that background, just general understanding. Like you could sit down and be faced with a back-end developer and they're like, hey, can you look at this back-end sort of structure? You don't need to like know everything, but just a general understanding of like what this means, what the diagram means, what these lines mean. And for most people it's like it's lines, dots and tables. It doesn't make any sense. But coming from that background of knowing it, you're like, okay, I don't have the full picture, but I have enough that I can then, if need be, take it to the client and explain.
Yeah.
Or I can, explain it to the rest of the team if they have issues. And it's the same on front end as well, is they'll come to you and be like, this particular library doesn't work for this reason, or we can't do this because of this library. And it's understanding, okay, it is sort of, it's not beyond our means to do it, but you understand the context of why it's not a quick fix, or why it's not something they can just change on the fly.
Yeah.
I think that comes into it well with timeframes and figuring out, how much time people need, and just being honest. Of, I know myself, this isn't a quick fix. That's just how it's going to be. Like, we can do anything we can to make that time frame, but it's understanding that really helps not only clients and us, but I think also the developers in terms of, they know that we're sort of on their side as well in terms of we get it. Like,
yeah.
We've been there before. We have. So we know sort of the timing that it takes to do general things.
Yeah, for sure. And I think like in terms of being able to do like your role and like do your best work, how have you found like the fact that we're 100% in-house design and development team as well, which is quite unusual to even have design and development together?
Yeah, it's a massive help. Like, because I think you realise along the way, like we can slack a team mates and be like, hey, can you quickly do this? You 5 minutes. But at the same time, they're busy people, like we all are in here. But I think like being able to stand up and just go talk with them and be like, hey, client needed this, client needs help with this, can you help? And generally most of the time they're happy to sort of hands off keyboard and help. Yeah. I think that helps massively. It allows us to really connect better with the team in terms of our role as well, because obviously it's a bit, you're a middleman, so it's a bit weird, but I think it just helps with the sort of relationship we have with the developers in terms of not constantly tapping them on the shoulder, but at the same time they know we're there, and the clients as well. Like they know that, if I'm talking about a developer with them, they know that they're probably sitting a couple seats behind me, and I can just go up and ask them, which generally you do. And so it's you get a lot quicker resolution, and it's a lot easier to work, and I think you get there's a lot of good conversations that also happen with it. Yeah. So a lot of the time, 4 p.m. on a Friday, you're getting through it, and maybe something comes up for a client, and you're like, I don't know how we're going to face this. So you'll literally pull a designer in, you'll pull a developer in, and you'll sit there and you'll just talk about it at your desks for an hour to get a resolution. And that hour, you've probably just saved 4 hours of like back and forth via email or Slack or whatever it is. You've just saved yourself all that time, and you've probably also just gotten an answer off to the client way quicker. Yeah, exactly. Communication is key, isn't it? So anyway, I think to wrap up, like, what would you
say is the thing that you would tell yourself? Like, you know, you've come a very long way. I think you've been working in IT for 5 years. Like, what would you say to young Taylor?
I think give it a go. Like, that's always going to be a scary step, is when you like giving it a go. Whether it be something like as small as, like, I don't know, going out for lunch with someone you've never met before, or literally changing your career path that you would dead set being certain on. I think it's just give it a go and like trust yourself along the way. Like you'll get that a lot of if other people aren't sort of believing in you, you're gonna stand no chance. So you've got to have a bit of your own hustle and grind to get it done.
Yeah. No, what a great one. I'm sure that Andrew would also vouch for that too. So thank you very much for, you know, our time today. I know that you're a very busy lady and I had to steal you away, but thank you. And, you know, to all of our viewers, please like and subscribe on our YouTube, and more will be coming.